Good morning, good evening, and good night, everyone. After all, this is an international program. Now we have another episode of PodHeitor, the most I ask production on the internet. This channel is sponsored by Bareos, a truly open source backup system for VMs, database, files, and other workloads. Omid Cloud, the user-centric cloud with real autonomy, predictable costs, and support that speaks your language, among others. Be a sponsor. After all, those who aren't seen aren't remembered. Our today's guest holds a degree in computer engineering from Cologne University of Applied Sciences. He has been working as a programmer and consultant with Linux and open source software for almost 3 decades and founded the project and company behind Bareos together with colleagues in 2012. He is a co-founder of the open source consulting company Das IT and one of the managing partners of Bareos GmbH and Co. KG. So let's welcome Philipp Storz. Good morning, Philipp.
Hello. Hello, Heitor. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you and also for our audience. So, Philipp, could you share your journey into backup software and how you became a key figure in Bareos?
Yes, of course. Yes, I have been working with Linux and open source already for a long time. I began my career as consultant at SUSE Linux. Then in 2004, I created the company you just mentioned, Das IT, which also specialized on open source consulting. And in our project, often we had also the requirement to have backups. And there I first time had contact to Bacula, software that you also know. I even wrote also a book about Bacula that was published in 2011. And then unfortunately, at the end of 2011, I think like that, Bacula changed the way of being licensed. So they chose to go away from open source licenses and get somehow open core. And that was the initial idea to say, let's keep the software open, freely available. And that's what we always loved about the software. And that's also then that we said, okay, let's do a fork. Let's ourselves, based on Bacula, create an open source software that really stays open and gives everyone the freedom that open source software is about.
Oh, that's nice. And for new listeners, what is Bareos and where does it stand in the open source backup ecosystem today?
So Bareos is the only 100% open source backup software that I know of that is capable really to work in big environments that companies are running in big data centers. There are a lot of other specialized smaller open backup software that often have a different focus, like backing up single machines or something like that. But as far as I know, Bareos is the only one that is really capable of doing comparable things like, for example, Commvault or TSM. I think the name is now different. So the big backup software in the companies do comparable things to what we also do.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen amazing things that Bareos can perform. So now we are at the version 25. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So our versioning scheme is when we have the major release, then we put the year. We try to we don't try to, but we release a major release every year. So it's also relatively easy to know what the current version is.
Yeah, that's nice. One of the highlights is the new Hyper-V plugin. How does it handle full and incremental VM backups? And I wonder if you can restore the virtual machine directly to the hypervisor environment.
Yes, so the new Hyper-V plugin connects to the APIs that Microsoft is giving us. And we use, so there are different approaches to do VM backups via Hyper-V. but we use, at least from our knowledge, the best API that also supports the so-called resilient change tracking. If some listeners might know the way that VMware does it, I think there it's called CBT change block tracking, which is in principle the same. So the basic idea about it is that every block that has been changed in a virtual machine disk is recorded so that you can make an incremental or differential block-based backup of a virtual machine. And you also then only back up the blocks that have changed in this disk. And you don't have to back up all the disk again. And that's exactly the same idea about it. So we are able to do full backups that also are smaller than usual full backups, because I think there it's the same like with VMware. Also only used blocks are being backed up in the full backup. And with incremental and differential backups, also only the blocks that have changed since the last backup will be backed up. And we are able to recover these changes both to a new machine, or we can also even just recover single disks if that's required, for example.
Yeah, this is amazing. This was a major advance for Hyper-V, right? Because before that, we have VSS-based plugins that they were very slow. They had problems with VSS, and this new method, it's amazing. It's very fast. Yeah. So next question. The Proxmox plugin is another major one because everyone is fleeing from VMware and looking for alternatives. Could you explain how it works with both VMs and containers and what makes the restore workflow special?
Yes, of course. So yes, we also noticed from our customers that a lot of people are unhappy with VMware, and especially the way that the pricing is done there. And also we already know Proxmox for quite some time, and we also see that this is a very powerful solution. The good thing about Proxmox is that Proxmox itself also is an open source project, which allows us to easily contact both the developers, but also the APIs of the product. And the first thing that we now do is, because we're just starting with the Proxmox plugin, is that we can do now just full backups of virtual machines and containers. The good thing is there that Proxmox offers a unified way of backing up both versions of guests, because they have both KVM-based virtualization and also containerization. And what we do is we call exactly the API that Proxmox offers. It's the so-called VZ-dump utility that does a very efficient backup of virtual machines and of containers. In our testing environment, we were able to back up virtual machines in a very ultra-fast fashion. We did backups up to 500 megabytes per second, which is quite nice. And for recovery, we have now currently planned two different options. The first one is, of course, directly to recover a virtual machine with a new ID. So Proxmox works with virtual machine IDs, so that you can just create a new machine, for example, exactly as it was before, or even overwrite an existing one. And the other option that we want to implement, or that already works in our testing environment, is to recover the image to the same place where, because you might know already that Proxmox is also able to do backups itself. And these backups are then stored in a certain subdirectory, and you can then look, if you're in the GUI, you can see that there exists a backup of this virtual machine, which usually is lying on the same hypervisor disk. And the idea is to recover the Bareos backup exactly to the same place where this would be, so that an administrator can recover the virtual machine from the Proxmox GUI and also do all the changes that you might want, like changing network connection or something like that. So I think that's also a good way to be able to recover, because the administrator can use it as he usually would use the recovery, while still we can get the backups away from the Proxmox server itself in case something goes wrong. Of course, you want to have your backups as far as possible from the original.
Wow, that's nice. That's a new approach. It sounds interesting. And Philip, now we also have Barri. It's a new feature also, the Bareos recovery imager. It sounds very impressive. How does it create and restore Windows disaster recovery images so quickly?
So I just had a presentation some days ago about Barri, and maybe I can share also my slides from there to explain maybe a bit better what it is about. Let me quickly have a check
Sure.
if I get this done here. That's it. I hope that it's visible now.
Yes.
Yeah, so Barri is the Bareos recovery imager. So Barri is only about backing up and recovering Windows. And the idea about Barri is that we use the existing APIs that Windows gives us to create a disaster recovery image out of the running Windows machine. So that's a big advantage because, of course, there's a lot of open source options to do a disaster recovery image out of a Linux live system, for example, where you can create snapshots of the disk that you have and you can recover them. But the really nice thing about Barri is that this can be done while the Windows machine is operating. And how does this work? So in principle, it is exactly working like VSS. You just already said about this. So VSS is the volume shadow copy service that Windows already has. And the good thing about it is that it not only is able to create a snapshot of the file system, but also it is possible to back up the snapshot on block base. So you create really a snapshot of the disk, and afterwards you can copy away the blocks that have been changed and the blocks that only the blocks that have been used, and create an image out of the disk while the rest of the operating system keeps running, and that's quite nice.
It's a bare metal plugin, right?
Yes, exactly. It's a bare metal. So if your computer is completely empty, all your data has been removed, or your disk, for example, has crashed, and you have to put a new one in, then Barri is the right tool to recover everything that has been on the Linux disks, on the Windows disks. That's the idea behind it. It's exactly about crash recovery, but you also can. It's quite handy to also, for example, what you can do is physical to virtual and forth and back. So you can create out of your running machine a Barri image, and you can recover it to either a virtual machine or a different hardware. And then you can also move a machine, for example, from a virtualization to a hardware or back. That's something also I already tried out. And yeah, it's like a Swiss Army knife. It's universally usable. Once you have an image, you can deploy it more or less everywhere. That's quite nice. So what maybe I can tell a bit about the architecture. So we do have a Barri plugin for the Windows file daemon, which is usually where the backup is done. So usually your Windows machine has a file daemon, which is the backup agent of Bareos, and that has a special plugin that is able to create these Barri disaster recovery image files. So during normal backup operation, from time to time, you can automatically schedule a disaster recovery image creation, which Barri will then create. We do have command line tool on Windows that can be used both to create a backup. For example, if you want to create a backup of the running machine and store it on a USB key, for example, it just has to be big enough, or an external hard drive, for example. Then also we have FD plugin that is able to run on Linux. And the idea behind that is to be able to recover an image out of the Bareos system into a disaster recovery live Linux, for example. So you can start up a live Fedora image, for example, that contains the file daemon, and then you can recover the machine where it is running out of the Bareos system. And the same also is available as command line tool on Linux. So in case it's easier for you to have a live Linux image, for example, and you want to recover the image that you created before out of the running Windows system on a USB key, you also can do this on the command line. So that depends on what the customer prefers.
Oh, I see. Many possibilities, yeah.
So how is the backup operation? So the FD plugin Barri FD on Windows starts a backup, then it creates a VSS snapshot of all the Windows file systems that are currently being used. It will back up the partition table and all file systems that this machine is using. The great optimization is that it really only backs up used blocks from the snapshotted file system. So usually a lot of people have much more space than what they are currently using, and the empty space is not backed up and doesn't consume any space in the backup. And this is then stored in a virtual Barri file in the Bareos system. That's how it usually works. An alternative backup operation is, as I just already said, so you can also use the command line tool, and it will, in principle, do exactly the same. It does a VSS snapshot. It extracts all the data that is needed, and it can write it to a Barri file, usually on an external drive. It also can write the data to standard out so that it can be piped, for example, to that standard compression, which is quite handy because usually you have quite a lot of compression rate there.
Good.
So I have a quick figure how this works. So in principle, on the left side, you see the running Windows operating system that just keeps on running and can do whatever it usually does. So also a server system with an MS SQL server, for example, just keeps running while you do this. Then there's a common part that I called here libbarri. So of course the command line tool and the plugin use the same code in the background that does all the work. And depending on if it's either done automatically with Bareos, then the output of the snapshot is stored in the storage daemon of Bareos server, and then ultimately it's stored on disk or tape or whatever the storage daemon is currently writing on. And alternatively, if you have a USB key connected to the Windows machine, Barri CLI will create exactly the same stream that is usually also created by the file daemon, but instead of writing it to the storage daemon, it writes it just to the local USB key.
Nice. So,
sorry, yeah.
No, go on.
Okay. Yeah. As I already said, we also are very flexible. So the first idea we had was that probably it's easier for us to create a Linux live system for doing the recovery, so that we can start up a Linux live system that will also run a file daemon. And then out of the running Bareos system, you just select the image that you want to have recovered. Select that it should be recovered to the Linux live system, and then will then write the data back to the connected storage devices.
Nice.
And
it's amazing.
yes, on Linux, we also have the command line tool. So in principle, exactly the same as you can do on Windows, you can do it on Linux for the recovery. And that's in principle exactly the same. So you have the option to do it on Linux and on Windows. And for Windows, it is there's also available a live system which the users probably already know. There's the so-called Windows PE, I think pre-boot execution environment or something, or pre-install execution environment. So it's a live system that you can create by scripting. So there's documentation online how you can do this. So it is not allowed for third parties like us to redistribute the image that we create, but there's a way of creating this yourself, and it's relatively easy if you're used to work on the command line. And if you start this Windows PE system, then you have just a running live system with a command line. And then you can connect Linux USB key containing the Barri CLI executable and the Barri image, and then you can write the data back to the connected disks. And this is especially required in cases because we have some first customer that is testing the solution, and there it was absolutely required to have the Windows option to recover, because he has a very new storage controller in his system. And this storage controller is currently not yet supported by the Linux kernel. So, and the only way we can recover to such a system is that we have to create a Windows PE image that contains the newest driver for this hardware. And then also we can recover the data via the Windows command line, because unfortunately, there is already a patch in the Linux kernel available, but it was not merged yet. So the newest version of this driver is not available. And so we cannot recover the data to the disk. So we are now with the option of also having the recovery inside of Windows Live System. We can guarantee that everything that people out there have on their Windows machine also can be recovered in the live system, because you just have to add the driver to the Windows PE, and then you can recover with every hardware that has a driver for Windows.
Nice. So now the user is able to add custom drivers, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's also, so there's documentation online, relatively easy to find, and then on the Microsoft pages, and there you also see how you can relatively easy add drivers to the live system.
Nice. Amazing.
Yeah, same here, the same picture with the restore operation again. There's the either a live Linux or Windows PE system, and then either you have it connected to your Bareos server system and you just make a recovery through the running file daemon, or if you prefer and you don't need any network connection for that, you also can just boot up a live Windows or Linux system and then use the CLI command to recover the disk. And what is really nice is also the performance. So I got a quite fast USB stick. That's the important part, because a lot of USB sticks are not very fast. But if you are doing recovery with Barri, you should buy a fast one. And I have a Windows laptop that's already quite some years old, maybe 4 or 5 or something like that. It has a 256 gigabyte disk, and I was able to recover a Windows 11 image or create an image in 2 minutes and recover it in 3 minutes. So that was quite nice. And of course, that depends on how many data you really have on your disk. But I was quite impressed how fast it really worked. So if you, for example, also could use it, for example, to clone common images. If you have a lot of identical laptops, for example, something like that also could be done with this, because it's definitely much faster to recover an image with Barri than to reinstall, for example, Windows 11 from any other source.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's already the part of Barri so far. I hope that was interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. But Philip, I also verified in the release notes that we also have high availability and core enhancements on the 2012 version. Now we have high availability for Bareos. What are the best practices for HA in configuration, database, and storage layers?
So that's honestly not really something that was added in new, but that was already available all the time by the architecture that how Bareos is set up. Maybe one information up front. So when Bareos is set up correctly, it already creates daily self backup with a self backup job, and this already is contains all the data that is required in case of a disaster to recover everything that has been stored, as long as you still have the backup media that it was backed up for. But what I'm now talking about is if you want to have, for example, one master primary server and a secondary server, and you want to have it highly available in a way that if your main hardware, for example, goes offline because, I don't know, the CPU is crashed or something like that, that you then can quickly start the secondary machine containing the same data and being able to go on with backup and restore. And yes, to make a Bareos system highly available, you always have to think about where is the state of the system that I need to make highly available, because I have to make sure that the state of the system is available on the secondary machine. In case that the primary one goes offline, I can start the software on the secondary machine, and it will contain all state and thus have all the knowledge that is required. And the system state of a Bareos system consists of three data sources. The first thing is the configuration files that contain all the information, how the Bareos system is set up, where are the clients, and so on. But as this is files, it's relatively easy to synchronize them on two machines. Then secondly, we have the catalog database. The catalog database contains the information about all the backups that have been done and all the files, for example, that are part of a certain backup job, and also the information on which media a backup is stored. And of course, number three, the media itself. So all the backup media is required to be available in case of you take over from a second machine. So that also needs to be made sure that the information in the media is still available on the second machine if you start it up. So let's have a look a bit more in the details. So yeah, the configuration files are relatively easy to synchronize. So either use command line tools like rsync or scp or something. Usually the configuration files are not altered very often. So if you do this automatically once a day, usually you are good. Or if you even create the configuration out of configuration systems like Ansible, Puppet, and so on, it's even easier because then you can directly deploy them on both machines, on the active and on the passive machine. Then the second part is the database. So the catalog database in Bareos is always a PostgreSQL database, and PostgreSQL has its own way of allowing highly availability setups. So there's a lot of details to say about this, but I'm not wanting to go too deep into details, but there are different ways. One is a warm standby server with log shipping that is already relatively quickly synchronizing all operations that have been done on the main database on the second one. And I think with streaming replication, even the difference is much lower. So that all this is definitely good enough for a backup system, because even if you would lose some entries of the current running backup, that would be not a big problem in case you would need to take over on the second machine. And also about high availability about backup servers is that, of course, it's very important, but as long as you don't need any recovery, it is in that moment not a big problem that that your backup server is not working. So it's not like other highly availability requirements, like, for example, databases that are running a whole web shop, for example, because if they go offline, you directly start to lose money. But if the backup system is not available, you only start to lose money in the moment that you lost some data and are not able to recover it right now. So it's not so strict. But of course, the bigger the environment is, the more important it gets. And then, of course, it makes sense to have it highly available.
Right.
Yeah, and the third thing I almost forgot, of course, the media needs to be highly available. So if you have, for example, and of course, with high availability, it always depends on what problems you want to be safe for. For example, if you take the media offline and send them, for example, to a different city, then even if your data center burns down, the data still is safe. But that's already relatively unusual, but still happens. Also, having a highly available storage system, for example, that is mirrored to a second data center might make sense. Then if you want to be safe of either, for example, ransomware attacks that delete your backups or something, you could use snapshots on a storage system. But still, of course, if attacker also gets the administrative rights of your backup system, then you also can remove the snapshots. But the more things that you configure, the smaller is the probability that at least automatic attacks will delete all your data. Right. And also what is possible, of course, is using warm media. So even an attacker that gets the whole administrative rights is not able to overwrite, for example, your LTO warm tapes, because they just don't allow this. So if you're using warm tapes, you are relatively safe about that, because it's at least not possible, even with administrator rights, to delete any data on the warm tapes. And another option that came to my mind is also there's a virtual tape libraries that also can, in the end, offer virtual tapes, and these can be automatically mirrored, for example, to a different data center or something like that. And that way you would also have the media highly available, because if your media is gone, of course, that's the biggest problem. So if the server is not working, that's bad. But if your media is gone, then you cannot do anything anymore.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Nice, wonderful, Philip. Philip, you know that I have a lot of customers that also use not only Bareos but Bacula for a while, and some of them have problems with tape libraries. Tape libraries, the monitoring them, it sometimes can be a problem. And I've read that on version 25, you have improved TapeAlert support in a neat detail. How does this new TapeAlert version, actually it's a new plugin, right, improve the tape library monitoring and troubleshooting?
Yeah, so the TapeAlert plugin is a plugin for the storage daemon itself. And just a quick overview of what TapeAlert is about. So the SCSI tape API allows to ask tape hardware for the so-called TapeAlert flags. So it's something like error warning and informational flags. And at certain points in time, for example, when the tape is loaded, when it's unloaded, when it starts to read, you can read these TapeAlert flags and find out what the tape currently is trying to tell you, if there is a problem and what the problem is. And what the TapeAlert plugin does, it exactly does that. It asks the tape drive for the TapeAlert flags, and in case some TapeAlert flags are set, then we print out the meaning of this flag. And an example, what could be there is, for example, it can tell you, yeah, the drive temperature is too high, or the drive voltage is not okay, or the cleaning tape that is currently loaded is expired, and other information. Because if we don't check the TapeAlert information, often you just get a read error, for example, from the tape drive, but we don't exactly know what the problem is. It might be that the drive is broken. It might be that the medium is broken. It might be that a wrong medium has been loaded. For example, if you load LTO 9 tape in an LTO 5 drive, probably that will not work, or absolutely it will not work, but you will, without asking for the TapeAlert flags, not quickly find out what the problem is. Let me quickly have a look here, what we have here.
This is amazing, because with Bacula, most of the time, if a drive needs cleaning or there is a problem with the drive, the user simply doesn't know. He has to go to the tape library console to understand it, and sometimes they don't have access to the console for some reason. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the cleaning is something different. So often it is possible to make the library the cleaning itself. So you can set up the library in a way that you tell it, okay, auto cleaning, please, and it will itself automatically clean the drives whenever the drives ask for it. And we, as the backup software, don't have to take care of it. But still, of course, it absolutely makes sense to detect all other TapeAlert things, and even that also, because in case the tape drive, for example, still says I need cleaning, and something went wrong or in the library, or the library was maybe not correctly configured, then still, of course, it's interesting. And to get a feeling about what you can expect here, we have one output. So the good thing is my colleague found a documentation online that not only tells you what numbers the different TapeAlerts are, but also what you should do when that happens. For example, here you have the output, TapeAlert flag 21 says clean periodic, and there you also get the information what you should do. So the tape drive is due for cleaning, and then wait for the current operation to finish, use a cleaning tape, and so on. So that's quite nice because it will directly help the administrator to understand what the problem is, and he also directly has an advice at hand what he should do. And that's quite nice because before it was the same as you say with us as with Bacula. You get an error, but you just have to guess what the problem is. You might find out more looking into the library GUI, for example, but this here is definitely much better because then as administrator, you immediately see, for example, okay, this drive, for example, really is broken, and I already can directly ask the vendor for support and to send me a new drive, for example, if it is broken, and I don't have to guess, is it broken or not, or start with other problems.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's it so far.
I really like this plugin. I really like it because most of the times it's the lack of information that the administration have regarding tapes. So, Philip, integration and operations. How easy is to combine Bareos with orchestration tools like Ansible or Puppet for backups at scale?
The good thing or the advantage for over other solutions is that the configuration is done in configuration files, and this is the optimal API for tools like Ansible or Puppet, because you can just create automatically, for example, in a big environment that automatically adds a new server, for example. You can directly also add a configuration snippet for exactly that server, automatically can install the file daemon on the machine, so the agent, and then also automatically add it directly to the backup system. So if you roll out a new web server, for example, to cover a higher load, you can also automatically directly add it to the backup system and have it covered with the backup. So that's really the optimal way of doing this, because we just have everything in configuration files, and we can, even without shutting down the system, just make a reload of the system, and it will then know about the new client and about the new job and how often it needs to be backed up and when and how.
Nice. Philip, what advice do you give to sysadmins planning to migrate legacy backup software to Bareos?
So yeah, there's no easy way of doing so, I would say, at least not automatic. But usually, if you have a bigger environment, there is already a backup plan where you have already an idea about what kind of data do I have, what needs to be backed up of each machine, how long do I need to keep it, when am I allowed to override it, and all this is the same for other tools and also for us. So if you already have a backup plan for your data, when and how to back it up and what needs to be backed up, it's relatively easy to adapt this also to run Bareos. And usually also the file sets, for example, what files need to be taken into account when being backed up, and what files also need not to be backed up, which also is very important. If you have already all this in your environment and your knowledge about what data is important and which not, then it's quite easy to migrate to Bareos. And for the data migration, it's often difficult. So, but usually it's also possible, but there's no easy solution. So often you then need to determine what data is really required to be kept. And then maybe you have to copy it over and make a new backup of that, for example, with Bareos, if you really want to stop the old software to being used. Or you have to run both softwares, the old one and the new one, for a certain time in parallel. And when you don't need the old backups anymore, then you can switch off the old system and only use Bareos from then.
Wonderful. Philip, Bareos is fully open source, what we like a lot, but it also offers professional support. How do you balance community contributions with enterprise requirements?
Yeah, so usually there's not a big how do you say, race between them. So community contributions are, of course, always welcome. And we do have some contribution plugins, for example, that we have in a special subdirectory in our source code, so that you can see, okay, these are community contributions that we would, for example, not support for a customer. So because we don't have it, the quality might not be high enough for what we think, but we are of course happy to add contribution always, because that makes the product even better. And yeah, there's not really a difference between the interests, I think. But of course, if customers have certain requirements, we also offer funded development. So if a customer says, okay, I like it very much, but I have this special requirement of, I don't know, a certain storage system or something that I need to back up, then of course we are also open for funded development. And we usually estimate how much effort it is. We would then implement it. The customer can pay us for that, or maybe we also find other customers that are interested in the same functionality. And in the end, every user will benefit of that, because afterwards we put everything as open source in our source code, and it is available for everyone. And that's exactly what the idea about open source is, right? So you just have to develop something once, and then everybody can benefit out of that.
Yeah, that's the right side of the open source software. So now, Philip, now regarding performance and storage, how does Bareos handle large storage pools and media rotation, especially with the duplication or snapshots?
So we have very big installations with, I think, thousands of slots, for example, and up to 30 LTO drives, for example. So we can handle quite big environments. We have environments that have been running, I think, more than 2.5 million jobs in one system. So big environments is nothing that we are afraid of. The very important part for scaling with Bareos is the database, because it's mostly not a problem if we have much data to back up, but the question is if we have many files, because we have a file entry for every file that has been backed up in the database. And if you have billions of files, which some customers have, then of course you have to have a machine running the database that is capable of answering catalog requests quickly. But that's usually today not a problem. So even the biggest customers have the setup. And of course, hardware is quite powerful today and not so expensive as some years ago. So usually we have no problem doing this. To be able to even better use disk-based storage, for example, since Bareos 24, we have a special storage format that is dedupable. So dedupe-friendly. We don't do the deduplication ourselves, but we write the data in a way that deduping file system, usually ZFS, for example, or there's also the VDO kernel plugin, I think from Red Hat it was donated, that also can do deduplication. So something like this can then reliably detect equal blocks and then do deduplication on the storage system, so that you don't have to spend so much, so you don't waste so much storage space on your disks. Exactly.
Very good. I assume it would work very nice with data domain, with pure storage as agreed. And
probably yes. Yeah. So we are quite flexible there. You can configure different block sizes that we align on. So, and that's also very important to know the block size or to find it out, because if the block size is wrong, for example, on ZFS, the dedupe block size per default is, I think, 128K. And if you use a different one, then you will see that the deduplication doesn't work very well. The good thing is we do have a tool for that is called bdedupe estimate. And you can, if you already have certain backups, bdedupe estimate can run over your existing backup files, so the volumes, and it will then estimate how much can be deduped in a certain block size. And then you can already upfront calculate if the deduplication in exactly your environment will help or not.
Oh, that's amazing. Philip, now for Hyper-V and Proxmox, are there any special recommendations regarding storage backends, disk, tape, cloud, regarding any functionality or restore, backup, restore speed?
So usually we don't have a special recommendation there. So the fastest backup and recovery usually is on disk, because there the access time is very low. But of course, disks are usually also the most expensive parts. And for S3 storage, for example, of course, it depends on what bandwidth you have to download a certain bucket, for example. From throughput, for example, the access time for tapes is relatively slow. So especially if the robot is required to make a tape change, that takes relatively long. But once the tape is mounted, it's also today no problem both to find the right point where the data lies on the tape. So the fast forward usually goes quite fast. And of course, the throughput of an LTO9, for example, also is very high. So usually we don't have any problem there. But if you really want to have very fast recovery, then disk storage still is the fastest way of doing that, because the access time is very low.
Amazing. Philipp, now regarding roadmap and future, looking beyond Bareos 25, what other features are in the roadmap? Perhaps Kubernetes or cloud integrations. What can we expect from the development?
So currently, the Proxmox plugin is only able to do full backups, and Proxmox has a new API that is able to also give us more information about what blocks need to be backed up and which none for incremental backups. But we didn't have the time really to look in depth into that API, but that's something that we are planning to look into, to also be able to not just make full backups, but also make more intelligent incremental backups of big virtual machines, for example. Then something we are going to look into is some customers ask for Microsoft 365 backups. So both there is a requirement, I think, to access the documents that are in the cloud. And we also plan to look into if and how it would be possible maybe to also access mailbox content. Honestly, I have to say that I'm not sure that is possible in a good way, but we have to look into that. And that's something we are going to put some research into. And also we plan to make the web interface that we have, the web UI. We also want to work on that and get it modernized and better in the future. That's the big things we are currently planning for the next year.
Oh, nice. Do you see any hope for AI in your future versions? Maybe anomaly detection in backup jobs or predictive failure analysis?
Probably that's possible. Honestly, I haven't really planned to do something like that, but we are of course always open for all ideas. And especially as an open source project, we also rely on feedback from customers and also from other users. So sorry. So if there's a good idea and people say, okay, that's something that could be that could be solved very good with machine learning or artificial intelligence, we of course would be interested in that. Currently, we are not planning to do so, but of course, if it brings the product forward and creates value for our customers, of course, we are open.
Amazing. Philipp, many admins mix Bareos with object storage such as S3, min.io. In fact, there is a specific plugin, right, for object storage. What tips do you have for using object storage efficiently, including immutability for ransomware protection?
So in the end, we support S3 storage on both sides of our software. So both we do have a plugin that can back up S3 buckets. So if you have a bucket somewhere and you need to back up the bucket itself. And on the other hand, we can use it in our backend. So we can store our backup volumes into S3 buckets. And as far as I understood, for example, AWS allows S3 buckets to be set, for example, to read only. And that, of course, would be a good option to create something like warm media inside of AWS. I haven't seen this option yet in something like Min.io, but I guess that's more or less just something that will be implemented soon if it's not yet available, because of course that's something that's quite interesting for everyone, because making the backups somehow immutable and resilient against ransomware is a very high priority in these days, because yes, ransomware of course actively tries to circumvent backup software, because of course if someone has a backup of his data, he probably will not pay.
Nice. Philipp, for someone evaluating Bareos for the first time, what's the single biggest differentiator versus proprietary backup tools?
So we offer the so-called community version, so the current build of our software for free on download.bareos.org. And what is definitely unique with us is that you can try it out without us even knowing it. So you don't have to register for that. You don't even have to ask us. You can just try it out. And that's the freedom of open source software, how we understand it. Also, as our software is open source, and you can both review the content of the software itself in the source code, but also you can keep on using the binaries that you have. You have always the full data sovereignty over your data. So it's not like with commercial products, as long as you pay, everything is fine. But if you don't pay anymore, you are not even allowed to recover the data that you backed up with the software often. And that's something that is not possible with us. So your data stays your data in any circumstance. And that's something that I think is very important and a big advantage over other products.
Yeah, especially what happens when the subscription is over, right? With most solutions, you are stripped of functionalities.
Yeah, or even obliged to delete the software itself. You have this, for example, in some contracts. And also, for example, I had a customer, a future customer, telling me that he said, yes, I have this, I don't even know which software it was. I have the software now running, but my license went out and I'm not allowed. So if I reboot the server, I will not be able to do both backups and restores anymore. So he was just keeping this machine running and asking us when we can help him to get the things migrated. So yeah, so that's the problems that you have with closed source software, and you cannot ever have these problems with us, because with us it's free, and you have your data in your hand like it should be, in my view.
Yeah, right. Finally, last question. How can users get involved? Mailing lists, GitHub, expert circles, and where can they find good resource to start?
Yeah, so we have different things, and one of the best thing I think is bareos.com/community. There you can go to the website and you can see join in the button, and if you click that one, you can see here, okay, how does the ticketing system, the bug tracker work? What is the Google users group, for example, and so on. So here you get all the information where to get connected to us, where the documentation is, for example, where you can see the latest repository information. So everything is linked on this page, and from there you can go on and see where can I get the software, where can I get involved, where I can access the documentation, and so on. So I think that's the best way, bareos.com/community. And from there, everything is linked and you can get easily in contact with us.
Okay, Philipp, it was a pleasure to receive you at our program. The doors are open anytime you want to join us. For details, I think it would be nice if we could schedule some episodes to talk about the Proxmox, the Hyper-V. We also have a plugin for VMware, right? For quite some time.
Yes, we have the plugin for VMware, exactly. And that is, yeah, I would say already available for quite some time, and it's really reliable. So that, for example, is also something we had a basic version of, and then we found a customer that said, yeah, that's important for me, and financed the development and the features that this customer needed, and that's something that we are always happy to do. So we can improve the product, and everyone in the end can benefit of a new functionality. And the VMware plugin now is really able to do a lot of things that it was not able to do before.
Nice. Congratulations for this amazing product. I'm also starting to test it. It seems really amazing. The interface. Can you show us a hint of the interface, how it looks like, just for so we can...
Let me quickly have a look. Yes, this is just a quick view. I have to change. Is it visible? No, not yet. Right?
I can.
I have to click here. Yeah, right. So this is really just a very small installation here because we have a lot of system tests in our source code that are automatically run to make sure that every functionality still stays working even if we change the code. And one part of those tests also tests the web interface. And I just quickly started up a test of the web interface to show you how it looks, because we automatically test out the web interface to work, to be able to make a backup, a restore, and so on. And this is here how it looks, but of course it only has one single backup client. So I cannot show really a big environment, for example, but here is the dashboard. You can see that you have a quick overview here on the top. How was the, what did the system do in the past 24 hours? And you can see, okay, in this small environment, 2 jobs were successful. But if you have a warning or a failed job, you can show them here. And then you can also directly click on the number here of failed jobs, and it will directly show you all failed jobs. And from there, for example, I can do this now with the jobs that have run. There you can also drill down what the problem, for example, was. So I have here a full backup and an incremental backup. For example, I want to look into the incremental backup, and the job ID was 2 here. And then you can have a look and get all the logs that have been recorded here and quickly have a look what's going on. Was there a problem or not? What is also quite nice, let me see if that makes sense in this environment here. You can also have a look at, okay, the backups, of course, have been so fast that it doesn't make sense, but we also have a timeline where you can see all the jobs that have been running in parallel in the last 24 hours, for example. Then you get something like a Gantt chart, where you can say, okay, that backup started here and ran till there, and the other started here and ran till there, and that's quite handy to parallelize the backups. If you're running jobs in parallel, then you can see, okay, which job is waiting for what, or is it running in parallel or not, or what might be the problem. So that is quite good to analyze how the performance of the system is, and if there's something that you can do more optimal, because maybe some drive is not being used at all and others are blocked, for example. And also a bit quite nice, but probably not super nice to see here because I don't have so much data, but we also are able to analyze over the whole system how much data has been backed up by which file daemon. So, and then you have all this block is, if you wish, 100%. And if you have multiple backups, then it will cut it in smaller pieces, and you can see, okay, the biggest block is this machine, and others are smaller. So, and that's often a good indicator. If you're, for example, running out of space, then you can quickly have a look here and see, okay, which one is the one backup job that consumes all of my data, and then you can exactly look into the backup of this machine if you can save some space there. And that's usually the best way to reduce, for example, the backup volume, because you directly can see, okay, the biggest space is consumed by this machine or by this backup, for example.
Right, it looks nice. Very quick interface too. Very friendly too. Can you run a backup job, for instance?
Yes, of course, yes. So, so this is what has been run before, and I can now click here on the run menu, and I can select, okay, for example, this job I want to run. it will automatically fill in most of the information here, but you can also override them. And if I'm happy with what's here, then I can just say submit, and it will automatically execute the job. Currently, you see it's waiting to be started. I can go back to the dashboard. But of course, as it's an incremental job about my test data that just ran before, it's done immediately because it has no bytes, and it didn't even use 1 second because nothing was backed up. And I can, for example, also recover, for example, my data, and then it will automatically select the things, create a virtual file system here, and I can see that it was just a subdirectory in my Git checkout that has been selected for backup. And of course, that's not much data, but I could, for example, just select a single file here or everything or whatever. So that's how it works. You have a graphical way of selecting it. You see, for example, the different the different file names, and you could select everything or just one or deselect different things. And if you're happy with it, then you can just ask it to execute, and then it will just execute the restore.
Amazing, very clean interface, very good.
But of course, in a real environment with much more data, of course, also the information would be much more informative than what I have here. But this is just the smallest test environment that I just have at hand here.
And I suppose also that you can change, right? Bacula director configuration, schedules.
Yes, so honestly, we didn't have so much contact to Bacula users.
Sorry, Bareos, sorry. Sorry about that.
But yes, because we also did some project, but that's already quite some time ago, to be able to migrate from Bacula to Bareos, and
Okay.
most of the work was to adapt the database format. But so you're now asking if it's possible via web interface to change the configuration. Unfortunately,
Yes.
that's not yet possible. So
Okay.
we do, the web interface can do in principle what you can do also with the with the CLI.
Okay.
But having the opportunity also to configure the whole system and not just the director is something that I'm dreaming of, and I want to get this implemented soon when we start with the new web UI. My idea is also both to have it modernized to be faster and really one page web application, and also to have a opportunity not just to configure the storage, the file, the director, but all other daemons also, so that you can configure the whole system. That's something that I'm envisioning, and I want to implement this, but I'm not sure if it's already will be available in the next main release, but we will definitely work on that.
Okay, Philipp, thank you so much. Thank you for the Bareos team for this amazing product. People in Brazil that they are talking a lot about it. They are eager to experiment, and I think in the whole world, they are eager to use Bareos to protect their workloads.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions, or if there are any questions, I'm happy here to answer.
No, there are no questions. There are some people that said hello here. Most of them, I know they're from the Bacula community, and I think they are also excited.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so as I said, we are happy. We're happy for everyone who tries our software out. We have the binaries online. We have the documentation online, and of course, you always can get in touch with us either via you, Heitor, as we are always in contact, and also you can always use the mailing list and ask questions or use the issue tracker on GitHub. So yeah, we're an open source product and open source software project, and happy for every feedback. So yeah, you're all invited to give us feedback, to tell us what you like, also what you maybe not like. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So that's it. Thank you, Philip. Thank you all from the audience. See you next program. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.